You're entering Corsi Nation.
This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and thank you for joining us on CorsiNation.com. We're doing daily podcasts. Today is Wednesday. It's July 9th, 2025. You can see us you can follow us on X at Corsi Jerome 1, and you can follow us on Substack, JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. You can see we're traveling, and I'm wearing my new shirt here. Take a look at this is the American Patriots Village, and that's a new that's basically what we're creating with this Veterans First organization. You'll be able to see us here very quickly at Veterans First Foundation.net, and we'll be having telemedicine. We're going to have Veterans First Project.com, which will be, so we'll have both a for-profit LLC and a foundation side by side. We're also creating a Veterans First Medical Institute. That's where I am right now. We're in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and we'll be creating a beautiful setting, a medical institute here to explore alternative medicines, medicines that are not, controlled and dominated by big pharmacy or medications, the pills, traditional medicine. There's a variety of really very creative alternatives being developed worldwide. This institute's going to have a clinic. It's going to have world-class broadcasting facilities, and we're in the process of creating it. There's going to be much more coming on this in the near future as we get it organized and get it launched. So please follow us increasingly on this Veterans First project. It'll be headed by Joshua Macias. Joshua headed the Veterans for Trump. He'll be the CEO. I'll be the chairman. We're having Kim Erickson, who is an expert in alternative medicine. She'll be the executive director of the Medical Institute. And we're in the process of organizing all this right now. And we'll be having a launch next month, much more publicly. It's going to be step by step. We're raising funds. This will be in addition to God's Five Stones, GODS_FIVE, spelled out 5 stones, plural, gods5stones.com, where we've had the continuing investigation on election integrity, demonstrating how these algorithms have prevented the creation of millions of false voter records that can be used in mail-in ballot schemes to win elections. We discovered this and presented it before the 2024 election, so we were able to block the use of these algorithms to defeat President Trump in 2024. As you'll notice, in 2024, the battleground states stopped counting on election night and reported for Donald Trump. They didn't get involved in the algorithm scam, which was to continue counting after the end of the election night until they had enough mail-in ballots to swing the election fraudulently to Biden. That election was stolen, and the evidence of Chinese interference with the computers was suppressed by Christopher Wray. We're also opening up a second investigation under God's Five Stones into Act Blue, and this involves the billions of dollars laundered through banks in a mortgage lending scheme that took money from the border, child sex trade, the fentanyl trade, and the Sinaloa cartel work with cocaine and with crack cocaine. All that money, the CIA and the Democratic Party captured into banks and funneled out into NGOs like Black Lives Matter and Antifa through fraudulent loans on mortgages. And we'll be describing this in a series of articles. It's already been turned over to the Justice Department. The Justice Department has not yet announced, but has begun an investigation, expanding investigation into Act Blue. Congress is also investigating Act Blue and will be helping Congress to expand their investigation into this new field of activity. Please take a look at gods5stones.com, and we're doing a new round of contributions in order to continue these investigations. Okay, the continuing dominant story today continues to be Jeffery Epstein. And as I predicted, I think that the administration's attempt to quash the story is going to undermine Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino. All three of these have made statements, and we know that there are client files, and the client files involve prominent individuals. We know Bill Clinton. Pictures were all over everywhere of Epstein's apartment with Bill Clinton wearing a blue dress, and high heels, dressed as a woman, and lounging in a chair. And so, what are you going to make of that? And you have the same thing going on with, Bill Gates. And there's clearly a high visibility individual, probably international, that's being protected. And I'm going to I want to show some of the things that are being written now. Here is an article that we're showing you, Chris is showing you, my producer Chris, on the fact that this article by Michael Snyder in the discern.com report, we're saying that after months of investigation, we're told there's nothing there. And so it's just not believable. I mean, this is the Trump administration's got to rethink this. I don't care who they're protecting. It's not worth it. The whole idea here that, whatever high visibility person it is worldwide, thinking we can get our own form of blackmail, in other words, get that country to cooperate with us because we know about their head of state being involved with Epstein in a major way. That's just not going to cut it to suppress the entire investigation, because the Obama administration was noted for only doing political investigations. And Trump campaigned on the fact that we were going to get the truth out of the Justice Department. Now, this is being reflected in things like yesterday's press conference in the cabinet room. And I want to play a clip of President Trump unloading and trying to refocus the story of Epstein as to why they're not going to release the information. And I think it's a lame attempt. It's an attempt to manage the news and try to divert attention, make Epstein go away simply because there's other events being covered in the news that are more dominant and more important. Let's play this clip, Chris. I think it's important to hear this.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Pam, could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
Okay, now that's just not going to cut it. I mean, now this whole idea that there's a minute missing, and it's just too convenient. And the fact that she's talking about lists with Fox News and saying, oh, no, that's just the file she meant. Okay, so the cover-up is apparent, and the damage that's being done here to Trump's credibility, and now they're into trying to manipulate and manage a story with Donald Trump saying all the success we've had, you guys are talking about Epstein. Yeah, talking about Epstein because it was central to a promise made, and it's not promises made, promises kept. Okay, now I've been a tremendous supporter of Donald Trump, and I think this is just a mistake. I think I've got a pretty good idea of why this kind of mistake is being made, and they're protecting someone internationally that doesn't deserve to be protected. People can handle the truth. Okay, so if a head of state was a pedophile and it brings down an important family, I don't care. Okay, because again, we've got to get into an era where we can't tolerate this behavior. Can't tolerate it in the heads of states. We can't tolerate it in Silicon Valley. Can't tolerate Satanism wherever it occurs. And this, my book has been fighting this on our site. We've got the book from Craig Lund on Silicon Satan, where Satan has dominated these upper classes and ruling classes, these elites for centuries. And it's got, I think, reached a pandemic level. Okay, now, when you look at the whole issue here of why you suppress this and the lies that now the administration is telling, not letting people just see the evidence and judge it for themselves, Donald Trump is, now the suspicions arise that the deep state always wins. Swamp always wins. Swamp always comes, oh, you can't do this because look at the damage it would cause over here. Oh, no, we've got a precedent here. We've been studying this for years, and we've got procedures. You don't want to disrupt our procedures. It's all nonsense. The legacy bureaucracy needs to be fired en masse. I'm going to get to that in a moment. But Trump is they're doing themselves a massive damage not to understand that we're at a point of history where the truth is going to come out, or the people who withhold it are going to be damaged. And I don't want to see Trump damaged here. I don't want people to see these people suffer self-inflicted wounds. Because the mega group is going to decide that Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, and Kash Patel can't handle it, then get new people in there. Because we didn't elect Donald Trump to be told more lies. And so this is a bad strategy. It's badly advised, and I'm sorry, but I don't go along with it. Okay, now the other story that developed is that dropped the same time is that the FBI is beginning a criminal investigation into former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey over the Russian collusion hoax. Now, the announcement of this is also not accidental. This is, again, typical Washington BS news management. So they try to drop a story that's going to divert attention from what they don't want talked about, namely the fact that this Epstein scandal is extremely detrimental to and eroding confidence in Trump's administration. So they say, oh, no, we're really on the job. We're going after Brennan and Comey. Well, I'm glad they're going after Brennan and Comey. Why don't they go after a dozen more? I was involved in that investigation. They tried to put me in prison. Ask me about it. I'll tell you how they lied and cheated and were manipulative, committing crimes themselves at the FBI level and the Department of Justice with the Mueller investigation. These guys are criminals. But don't use this story, dropped today, to divert from the fact that the Epstein crimes are being covered up. People are going to want to know, is Epstein, where did he get his money? Was he, in fact, a CIA agent? Did he work for Mossad? He was clearly involved in blackmail schemes. And this story isn't going away, nor should it. Because, again, you got P. Diddy, and you've got Comey's daughter as a prosecutor, and she suppresses the major charges that can be brought against P. Diddy. So once again, the elite win, the pedophiles win, the criminals win, and we all lose the truth, and we lose an opportunity to expose this evil. And I'm just not going to put up with it. The point is, we need to get to the bottom of this. Whichever head of state is being protected, let them be exposed. I don't care what it does to ancient dynasties or any other damn thing. This is wrong, and it needs to be addressed. It's a mistake not to address it. And I think the public this story is not going to go away. If the administration thinks it's going to go away, they better think twice. And to say, oh, no, we can't release the videos because they're all child porn is nonsense. There may be a lot of child porn in there, but the reason everything is being filmed is blackmail, pure and simple. And that's the typical that's the typical issue that you have when you see this kind of activity going on. Okay, so this is a major story, and I'm sorry, but I'm just not gonna drop it. And so therefore, everybody better get ready for the truth. The truth is gonna come out here. And the truth is, in fact, whatever it is, I think it's gonna be of major nature. And then after it's dropped, everybody's gonna say ho-hum because everybody knew that anyway. I mean, you think people aren't aware that the Obamas and the Clintons, and the Bidens, how much hair snipping of little girls do we have to see from Joe Biden to know he's a pedophile? And, Podesta and all of his pictures of children in his house. So Pizzagate, oh no, that's all nonsense. No, it's not nonsense at all. And this corruption of child sex trade has got to be exposed. And Act Blue is going to be also a way to expose it. And I'm sorry, but the truth is going to come out here. And I really strongly advise the Trump administration not to make the mistakes of the Obama and Clinton administrations. We're not in an era where lies and cover-ups are going to be tolerated any longer, even if they are for supposedly justifiable national security reasons. Okay, the same thing with, going back to FDR. God willing, I'll have the time to write a book about this. FDR, Pearl attack not being a surprise attack, but one engineered by FDR, removing the oil from Japan in order to induce Japan to attack us at Pearl Harbor, with that fleet from the Japanese tracked as it was coming across the Pacific. We were supposed to believe that Japan got an attack fleet of carriers across the Pacific to attack Pearl Harbor, and none of the monitoring stations in operation in 1941 picked it up. Okay, so that was equally incredible. This is just ridiculous and a tragedy. I'm sorry to see it happen. Okay, now moving on, we had an important Supreme Court decision yesterday. Supreme Court decided to these judges. So the Supreme Court recently came out with a decision that said these judges are not able to make national injunctions based upon local circumstances, and yet these judges, like this Judge Brian Murphy, thought he could dodge that, and so he basically said that he was going to enforce anyway his injunction that Trump had to stop firing people from the bureaucracy. Well, the Supreme Court, in an 8-1 decision, and only this Supreme Court Justice Kanji, or however you say her name, this recent black Marxist the Democrats put on the Supreme Court, a Harvard-based Marxist, she was a lone vote, staying out. But the Supreme Court made it clear that this was a July 3rd decision. This Massachusetts federal district court judge, Brian Murphy, is not going to get away with dodging the court stay. Okay, so this stay was again, this is an article in the CERN report. And again, it's written by Daily Signal. And what they're saying is accurately that the Supreme Court said that the injunction to not be able to fire from the federal bureaucracy was stayed. In other words, you can't enforce that injunction. And that means that Trump is now free to fire the bureaucracy. The court's going to mandate that back to the district court or to the circuit court for further investigation. But the big news here is that you're finally going to have increasing Supreme Court diligence to get these judges who are rogue judges. This was what they call a midnight judge. This judge, Murphy, was put in at the last minute. Let me get the story for you exactly, but it was a last minute appointment. So Chuck Schumer rushed this judge, Brian Murphy, in Massachusetts Federal District Court through confirmation in the Senate during the lame duck session after the 2024 election. And Murphy's nomination was barely confirmed on December 2nd by a 47-45 vote. Even Susan Collins of Maine, arguably the most liberal Republican in the Senate, I guess she's in competition with Murkowski from Alaska, voted against Murphy because he's so radical. Okay, so the injunction issued by Murphy prevented the removal of criminal illegal aliens, third world countries. And yesterday, the Supreme Court stated they were telling another judge to fall in line. So the Supreme Court is determined to say Trump can deport criminal illegal aliens, and you can't stop that process. It's going to say that Trump is the chief executive officer. He can fire the whole damn bureaucracy if he wanted to, and I wish he would. This whole federal bureaucracy needs to be gone. Any legacy employee of the bureaucracy is there likely to serve themselves and wait the time out until Trump leaves. Trump's got until only one term, he can't run again, and so he'll be out of there. And they can just sit around and wait until that happens, and then they can do whatever they want to do, go back to their leftist woke agenda. Okay, so now I'm pleased that finally the Supreme Court is doing the right thing and is taking steps to make sure that Trump can use his executive action and get things cleaned up. And I think Trump's going to do it in short order. Now, Chris, I'm going to ask you to comment in just a minute as I cover a couple more things that are developing. First of all, with the BRICS nations are getting ready to meet in Brazil and Rio de Janeiro. And at stake here is this port in Chile, which China has a MOU on, a memorandum of understanding to buy that port. It's the only deep water port on the Pacific in South America. China already owns and operates the port in Peru. China's going to then own all the ports in South America on the Pacific, including the control of the southern part of the Pacific Ocean by Antarctica. We'll have no place to put our Navy, but China will be able to have a bi-oceanic corridor across to Brazil and also into Argentina through low gradient passes in the Andes. And these can be improved so that ships can be offloading cargo on the Atlantic, transported by land over to the Pacific, loaded up on these giant cargo ships from China that hold 24,000 TEUs. A TEU is a cargo container, which are enormous ships, and they have a 15-day shorter journey across the Pacific to China. This is a strategic decision that cannot be ignored any longer, and we're going to begin fighting it in conjunction with an effort to get an infrastructure bank established for the United States of America. We're going to be making a major issue out of this in the next coming weeks. Chris, you want to come on and comment? But I think Donald Trump here has got to become aware and focus on the Chinese threat. And I'm going to comment on what's going on both in Ukraine and what's going on in Israel, Iran in just a second. But you want to comment on this much, Chris? And then next I'm going to do the Texas tragedy and the fact that Trump has agreed to go to Texas and personally see and intervene in the tragedy, I believe, on Friday. Chris?
Well, Trump was going to go down there anyway. I'm surprised he hasn't been there already, but he will be there. It's going to happen. We're going to see what the response is. I wanted to allude or go back to what you were saying about the Epstein case. A couple of things that I noticed. One, during the press conference at the cabinet meeting. The press questions at the cabinet meeting. Trump went off on the reporter by talking about Epstein. Normally, Donald Trump would be happy to answer questions like that are off the cuff and kind of off the subject. Once in a while, he'll say, "Well, we'll talk about this instead." No, but this time, interestingly, he did not want to really answer the question. Now, normally he would. Normally he'd be proud of it and pat himself on the back, pat his administration on the back over the findings. So something really is up. And the idea is, I don't think the video filled with child porn would be great to release to the public. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the client list. We're talking about potential criminal charges and why, in fact, the big cover up for Epstein. Thirdly, I believe the P. Diddy trial is sort of the shiny keys that the media is using, and of course the government's using to hope that people pay a little less attention to Epstein and say, well, at least we got P. Diddy.
Yeah, well, they didn't get P. Diddy for the major crimes.
Of course not.
That all the people implicated in those major crimes got free. Okay, so they're protecting all of the pedophiles and people who were blackmailed. And again, it's the same kind of cover up going on. So it's what they, the Nixon administration, they call it the limited hangout. In other words, you do a little prosecution of them. That's hung out. And in the meantime, the big crimes are excused. So they're not hung out. And they're hoping the public's attention isn't acute enough to follow the magic trick being played, and everybody just forgets about it. But I don't think the Epstein thing, it's been going on now for years. I don't think it's going to be forgotten about. And the idea that there's a missing minute, now they're going to create missing minutes and other tapes and say, oh, look, it happened everywhere. Well, go ahead and create missing minutes at 100 tapes. That's not how that prison operated. And there were clear ways to commit, murder on Epstein and get away with it. And I think that's exactly what happened. And I think the American public is going to be hard locked in to, say that we know the truth because it's obvious. If the Trump administration wants to lie, the Trump administration is going to lose credibility on this issue. And I'm encouraging it not to do so. Okay, because again, people can stand the truth here, and the truth needs to be told. Okay, Chris?
Exactly. And one more thing, the report you did, the Discern report, great story, but the headline should have been changed. The headline reads, "We get nothing. The Epstein case is destroying faith in the government." People who voted for Donald Trump really never had that much faith in the government to begin with. So basically, what we're getting is the Epstein case is reaffirming the lack of faith in the government.
Yeah, as far as Trump, the swamp wins again. This is how Donald Trump's first term got destroyed. He listened to too many people who were giving him advice which were intended to destroy the administration. And I think he's fallen into the trap in a couple of ways again. So let's switch now to the international. Donald Trump yesterday resumed arms shipments to Ukraine. So he's going to supply this little SOB, Zelensky, parading around as an actor with his camouflage suit, with more money and more weapons. And so Russia last night launched a 700 drone attack on Kiev. And if you want to play this game, Putin's just going to finally say, I've had it, and take Kiev. Now, the idea that Zelensky is going to be allowed to perpetuate this war, to enrich himself and other oligarchs, when the whole world is turned against it, he's not getting in NATO, and Ukraine is not getting in NATO. And if they continue along perpetuating this war, because Zelensky wants to do everything he can to stay in power as long as he can, this little SOB is a walking dead man. There's only got to be about 50,000 people in Ukraine who want to see him, depart this world and go to the next. He's killing people. The war is a desperate loss. You're not going to gain back the territory Russia has without a nuclear war. The war was caused by Hillary Clinton, and with the Clinton Foundation, Obama giving Biden free rein to have his son make billions of dollars in bribes out of Ukraine. They knew Ukraine was the most corrupt country in the world, and Obama said, Clinton, Hillary, you go ahead, you can make money in Ukraine, and you can too, Biden. Because basically they knew too much about Obama himself, including most likely his pedophile activities and his homosexuality, which has been an issue since 2008. These people's sexuality is what's going to kill them. And we don't need these kinds of corrupt leaders. We need leaders that can understand true values and, not push the war into, a stupid war in Ukraine, which the neo-Nazis in the West were killing the largely Russian Orthodox Christians, Russian speaking, in these two provinces that Putin now holds. Okay, now in the talks yesterday between Netanyahu and Trump, I think ended better than I anticipated them ending. Trump did not demand an immediate ceasefire. What he's continuing to tell Netanyahu is to clean out the Gaza and make sure that we destroy Hamas. Now, Trump's vision here, and he's begun to get support from the Arab nations already on renewing the Abraham Accords, which are, go back to Abraham, who is the patriarch of both the Christians and Muslims, and Jews. Abraham was the origin of all three religions with his sons, and that's biblically clear. The Abraham Accords are to say that all of these religions can cooperate in peace and prosperity and work together. The only condition is accepting the Jewish state of Israel as a legitimate state that doesn't need to be eliminated. There you see the picture of Trump with the Abraham Accords being first promulgated, and I think they're going to be resumed, especially with the declaration that came out of Hebron, which greatly encouraged me in the process of having the responsible Muslim leaders saying we no longer want to kill Jews and destroy the state of Israel. Again, that can't be done without a nuclear war. And we're approaching the point where we can't have wars anymore. So Trump's long-term strategy of expanding the Abraham Accords, reaching out to countries like Libya and saying, let's establish a place for the Palestinians to go and live in peace and prosperity. Trump's understanding, which could apply equally to this port in Chile and to the Middle East, and this is a theme I'm going to develop strongly, is that we don't need to spend taxpayer dollars. All Trump has to do through an infrastructure bank or through the Treasury itself is guarantee the private capital that's going to come in to do this development. Private capital has a hard time in infrastructure development because the initial phase requires a risk investment to prove out that the project is viable and will work. If that initial assessment turns out the project is not viable for one reason or another, the geology or topography doesn't handle it, the economics of it don't support a profitable operation once it's built, any number of reasons, the infrastructure investment in the first stage is lost. If that can be guaranteed, then you can find private companies that will come in. They'll build that port. We already talked to some. Some of the major investment companies in the world would be happy to develop this port under guarantees. It's going to be the same in the Middle East. Under guarantees, you can have major corporations come in and develop the Riviera and the Mediterranean that Trump is talking about. Okay, so the fundamental issue here is not to repeat policies that have never worked. Okay, and in the Middle East, allowing Hamas, like first Palestinians come back, now they come back into Gaza, then Hamas comes back. Okay, and then that sets up a pattern we've seen going on for more than 50 years. What was fundamental about these accords coming out of Hebron was the declaration that it was no longer a necessity of the Muslim countries to want to eradicate Israel. And the toleration of Israel as a Jewish state is the one key element that's happening right now and needs to be fostered. We go back to a two-state solution, saying that there was a legitimate Palestinian state that demands its own legitimate state. It is just not the case. Palestine was always a fiction of the British on these people living in this area, including Jews and Christians and Muslims. They were all Palestinians. There was no Palestinian nation ever. For the Jews, they have a legitimate claim to that territory going back biblically, again, back to Abraham, back to Moses, and back to the Promised Land. And they were thrown out in 79 AD by the Romans when the Romans destroyed the Second Temple. The Jews were rebelling against Rome, and Rome had enough of it. Even Jesus said, looking at the Second Temple, the Passover just before he was crucified, that not a stone would stand on a stone in that temple because the Jews were going to be rebuked by Rome and sent out of Israel. The Bible said the diaspora of Jews sent around the world would return to the Promised Land to create the state of Israel. It happened in 1948. The Bible says those who help Israel, God will help. Israel biblically is not going away. Just take a look at Ezekiel 37:38, which I think has widely been interpreted correctly as a war between Iran and the rest of the world in terms of the destruction of Israel. And that ends up with God intervening and Israel wins. In the end, God does always win and God does intervene. Now, the key also here is for Trump not to follow a failed policy on the Epstein scandal. This is what destroyed Obama. It's what destroyed Biden. The cover-ups, ultimately, the American people won't tolerate them anymore. So don't go down with Epstein, a failed path that has been proven not to work. Now, finally, with regards to Iran, Iran has now thrown out the International Atomic Energy Agency and say they're going back to developing nuclear weapons. Now, they don't have a chance in hell of doing it because these facilities are rubble. It's going to take years even to get into these facilities again. And yet Iran is determined to go to that path. Now, I think Donald Trump announced Iran will not be allowed to go back to have nuclear weapons. But if the Trump administration seems that by sparing the life of Ayatollah Khomeini, that they would have somebody signing a declaration of peace, Trump administration is delusional. These people are mad. Even the remaining Revolutionary Guard, their commanders were decimated by the infiltrators that we and Israel and CIA and Mossad had placed internally into Iran that executed a lot of the top level of the army. The army invited China in with 2 airplanes. They removed the 2 nuclear warheads that Iran had at the beginning of the war, plus the highly enriched uranium, and took it back. So when Khomeini said this will be the night in which the world changes, he was surprised to find out he didn't have the 2 nuclear weapons he planned to hit on Israel the next morning or that night in a barrage of 1,500 missiles, 2 of which were nuclear warheads. And the Israeli intelligence said one of them had a 70% chance of getting into Tel Aviv. So I wrote a book called, in 2011, Why Israel Can't Wait, Israel Couldn't Wait. Trump's now, I think, given the green light to continue destroying Hamas in Gaza. That's going to continue. But Trump should not undermine those successes with protecting a stupid pedophile head of state, Jeffrey Epstein, because the government asks him to do so. And the CIA and the department, and probably Marco Rubio's State Department says, oh, no, we can't rock that boat. Well, if they don't rock the boat, it's going to be rocked anyway. So I encourage Trump to get ahead of that story rather than be overwhelmed by it. Finally, I'm glad Trump is going to Texas. Trump needs to show that Biden was wrong in North Carolina. And if FEMA can't get in here and do something, we don't need FEMA. It can now disband it. And the courts will not stand in his way. Those children who were killed are a tragedy. And it's very hard to explain why God would allow a tragedy like that to kill children. I know theologically that's always been a problem, and we have to look for God's purposes being inscrutable, those children being saints already as innocents, their lives were taken. But the tragedy needs to be addressed. And it did not result because Trump fired weathermen. It may have resulted because the Obama and Biden administrations thought they could geoengineer the weather. We find out about all these chemtrails and all the other things done in geoengineering of the climate. We may find out that more damage was done under the hoax of climate change, global warming than we know. And these people who have been running the global one world government future, we know are depopulationists. They're insane. They like to murder people, and their policies are murderous. That's got to stop. So we look at today and where we are, we're seeing that Donald Trump is again winning. I believe he will. I've always said about Donald Trump, he always wins just before he was destined to lose. It always looks like he's going to lose until he actually wins, or just before he wins. And I think he can win on this Epstein one too. It's just going to take some clear thinking. Maybe on his flight out to Texas, he can give it some thought. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Thank you for joining us. In the end, God always wins. Broadcasting here on Corsi Nation every weekday. Thank you for joining us. God bless.